In the days after I first posted content about this little guy here, the Anbernic RG35XX, I've gotten a lot of comments asking me what I thought about the Miyoo Mini. It's a device I had looked at the same time I was buying this one, and honestly, I would have probably bought the Miyoo Mini if it were available. This device was in stock, and it was inexpensive, and it looked very similar, so it's the one I went with. Now, that being said, today we're going to be looking at another device, this time via a website called Mech DIY. I will have a link in the description down below. This is who actually sent this thing over for me to look at. We're not just looking at the Miyoo Mini, but this is in fact the Miyoo Mini Plus. And basically what you're getting here for $79.99 is the Miyoo Mini with a bigger screen and some slightly improved specifications. So let's jump into the unboxing experience now. First off, I want to point out this thing's kind of an interesting box design, right? This thing actually slides open like that. What do we have under here? This looks like some sort of instructions, which appear to be in Chinese. Okay, there's the English version there. Let's set the console aside for now. A screen protector in the box, as well as an USB-A to C. And look at this. This appears to be a little SD card adapter. That is a pretty nice little added value there. Not bad. So taking it out of the box, the first thing I can tell you is that yes, it obviously is very similar to the Anbernic device, but it is a little bit smaller. It looks like we have a thing to peel off of the screen here. Honestly, the buttons do feel very, very similar to the Anbernic. Flipping around to the back, there's this sort of ridged thing going on here, which I'm not sure how much I'm going to love that, because you're holding on to that all the time. That might not be super duper pleasant. You got your shoulder buttons here. Of course, the two buttons are raised a bit to make them easier to access. Interestingly enough here, you can access this back panel to get to the rechargeable battery pack. That is very interesting. For a split second, I was like, man, is this using AA's or something? What year is it? Power button up top, volume rockers on the side, headphone jack, USB charging, and then there is, of course, SD card, which is probably already loaded with all manner of games. Let's go ahead and fire this thing up. It's very, very quiet, but there's actually menu music. So I'm not sure if that's going to be audible or not, but that is interesting. The screen does look quite nice. We have recents, favorites, games, and then RetroArch app, and then settings. Let's go into game, and you can see there are 2 full pages of games that are on here. Let's go to Game Boy Advance, and yes, like I was expecting, there are just a ton of games. 908 Game Boy Advance games already on here. We'll go ahead and jump into PlayStation 1, as that should be the most powerful console that this thing is going to be able to properly emulate. Let's look for a game that I think will be a decent fit for this test. We're jumping into Tomb Raider here to start off, a game that, you know, doesn't control all that great these days, but as you can see here, we are running very, very well. Absolutely buttery smooth. I have not played this game in so long. How do you do anything? There's my guns. Okay, so that's how you strafe. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Couldn't she could she wall jump, or does she just smack her? Yeah, she just smacks her chest into the wall. I forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, PlayStation 1 is looking pretty good here, guys. And then, of course, in the game, you can press your menu button here, which will allow you to do some different things, like go ahead and do a save state, which I just did there. So you can load right back into where you were. There's also this native menu, which will allow you to do some sort of additional things. You can load and save states in there, load CD image options like frame skip, VSync, all sorts of interesting settings. If you don't know what you're doing, you probably should not be messing around with a whole lot in there. Let's take a look here at app. What do we have in there? File Explorer and then RetroArch. So, okay, so you can go to the File Explorer here and actually look at the files on your drive. That's actually a really nice touch and something I'm glad to see on here. And then, of course, you can get into RetroArch and do some things in there. But again, if you don't know what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be messing with that stuff too much. Let's look at the settings. So we're already on 8 out of 10 brightness. Can't do a whole lot more there. Another nice touch here is the ability to actually connect to your home Wi-Fi network. This worked pretty much as advertised for me. Under color, you can do some things to change like the illumination. Certain games that look really dark, boosting this illumination setting should help out with that a little bit. You can also tweak the hue and saturation, contrast, and so forth of the screen. This is not like a theme. This is actually like the way that the screen itself looks. Language, you've got key mapping here, which you can, oh, I just changed that to a button. There we go. Background music, you can turn that up or down. Now there are also themes. And as you can see, some of these really radically change the look of the device in ways that I actually quite like. Miyoo Jazz, I think I've seen a clone of this. This looks really good. So I really like this theming system. This is really nice. You've also got settings for hibernation, and you can check out some device information here as well. The SD card is almost full right out of the box. You can also favorite a game like that by using the menu key, and it will now appear in the favorites as well as your recents on that screen to jump quickly back into a game. I do quickly want to point out that the Anbernic device actually does have an HDMI mini port up top, whereas the Anbernic device does not. The only port on this is that USB-C on the bottom, which is not capable of doing video out so far as I'm aware. So that's a little bit of a win here for the Anbernic device. We'll take a look at a couple more emulators here just to kind of drive home the point. But as I showed you earlier, if PlayStation 1 is working well, these other consoles that are older and easier to emulate are also going to be working really well also. And we'll jump into everyone's favorite Rockman 1, which I believe is, okay, having some sort of a issue waiting for client. Boy, that is just awful. And that continued happening for every game that I tried. I tried 2 more games after this, and they were all doing this weird thing in the middle that was kind of jittering and flashing and so forth. I rebooted the device, and everything ran just fine after that, Rockman included. So those issues with Rockman appear to be totally resolved now. My issues with playing Rockman have just begun, but those issues with the game itself, jittering and all that weird stuff, appear to be totally resolved now. So looking at Contra here, everything is obviously running just fine. I am terrible at this game. I'm just consistently getting myself hurt and killed, but nonetheless, the game is perfectly playable, and so shall be every other game from this console. Okay, but it's going to be running just fine. And really, that's going to be the story, guys. Everything I'm going to show you is probably running really quite well. So let's look at Sonic Advance, and this actually looks quite nice. I like the Game Boy Advance stuff top and bottom. Absolutely no issues running Game Boy Advance either. I do like the cool touches here when you're playing some of these systems. It'll give you these nice little frames around them. Of course, this is Game Boy Color, and this will also be a good opportunity to check out this speaker. Let's go max volume. I think it sounds okay. It's not the best speaker in the world, but for what you're getting and the kind of games you're going to be playing, I think it's going to do okay. Now, there is another operating system, another firmware that can be flashed to this device called Onion OS that can provide apparently a lot more quality of life changes and improvements. I've not done that on my device. I'm keeping it bone stock for the moment, but it is definitely an option you might be able to take advantage of. Overall, I think that this thing is pretty solid, and one of the biggest advantages that it has is that apparently it is just in stock. The original Miyoo Mini, because of the size of the screen, from what I can tell, made it very hard to stay in stock. This thing is currently available, and for $79, tons and tons of games. Basically, think PlayStation 1 and down, going to be totally playable, very pocketable. Overall, I think it's just a solid device. That being said, the RG35XX with Garlic OS, very easy to install for $69, might be a good option as well. They're both really good, really similar overall devices with really similar performance. I would say that my continued biggest hesitation with devices like these are the firmware and the operating system. Devices I'm reviewing, like the Retroid Pocket Flip that runs Android, might be an easier experience for a lot of people if you're buying this to give it to your kid or something like that. I feel like there's less they can do here to screw things up than they can on that device. There's a lot of settings that you can get into inside RetroArch. You really have to kind of explain to them, only play the games, don't go do anything else. That still is kind of my biggest issue with these things, because I've got several of them. I'd love to give one to my little brother, but I'm afraid of what it would do to it. Again, big shout out to Mech DIY for sending the Miyoo Mini Plus over for me to test. It's been a lot of fun to use. Guys, thanks for watching. Links in the description down below. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.